This is the Reading Instruction Show. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Andy Johnson. Today, we're talking about the difference between literacy scholars and journalists. An important thing to know. Journalists write stories. People tell them things, they write it down, they put it together to create a story. They are writing for impact versus accuracy. Often. For example, Sarah Schwartz writes a lot of stuff. She is a journalist. Accuracy doesn't really matter for her. A new low, she says. Well, she's just writing that. She's choosing what to look for. There's no peer review in what she writes. She's just writing stuff. Is this really a new low? Well, natural fluctuations over time. What is she's writing about is conveniently inaccurate. These are 8th grade scores. It's not a new low. Yes, we had the COVID dip and we're still coping with that. And besides, her article was written at the end of 2025, Sarah Schwartz. We've been making a big deal about all this new legislation and science of reading. Look at the years when all this legislation has passed. 2019, 21, 22, 23, 24. So you're saying a new low? Correlation? Sounds like all this new science of reading legislation is causing this new low. If the science of reading was to create miracles, we should be expecting to see miracle upon miracle by now. Journalists are welcome into our academic discussion, but they should not get a free pass. Publish in an academic journal. Speak at a conference that allows for discussion. Get alternative points of view. Cite specific research. Scholars are subjected to blind peer review. And again, Sarah Schwartz is one. She and Emily Hanford, they're just saying stuff. There's no checks and balances. She's talking about queuing, and she doesn't even know what queuing is. Journalists are not literacy scholars. Research has shown. All right, scholars can't get away with just saying research has shown. What research? Show me. Show them for who, for what. You can't just say stuff. And in bizarro world, American public media is cited as a source of academic information. And too often we are living in that bizarro world. Scholars must rely on research, not data, not surveys, anecdotal evidence, not interviews, but research. And research is not research unless and until it has been subjected to blind peer review and published in an academic journal. Here's the process. Someone conducts a research, they write it up, they send it to a journal. The editor sends it to people who are experts in their field, usually 2 to 5. Blind peer review, because these reviewers do not know who wrote the manuscript, and the manuscript writer does not know who the reviewers are. The reviewers assess and evaluate. They give their comments and criticisms, and they make a recommendation, either to accept with revisions, or reject. The editor takes all that, and the editor makes the final decision. And often there's back and forth between the writer and the editor before it's published. That's a lot of filters there. Let's see what happens with a journalist. Oh, people tell you things, you write it down, you send it to your editor, and they publish things. Not a lot of filters there. No blind peer review by experts in the field. And if you write stuff on the internet, you just think of stuff and you write it. Karen Viatas and Kelsey Piper wrote this hilarious thing on a Substack called The Argument. And if you want a good laugh, go ahead and go there. Lots of laughs there. A scholar is different from a journalist. Anecdotal evidence, which journalists rely on, is different from evidence, and being popular is different from being right. Now, see if you can tell me which one of these refer to a journalist and which one to a scholar. The work is submitted to blind peer review. They write stuff. Scholar, journalists have extensive background knowledge about what they write. They write what people tell them. Important. Cite specific research when making a research-based claim. Just says research has shown, scientists are telling, it has been proven that. Understands the basic elements of science in determining causality. Randomly assigns causality. Oh, scores are going down. It's that. Correlation does not infer or imply causation. If two things occur together, one must have caused the other to occur. Generalized to larger population only if the sample is similar and ample. Generalized to large populations based on a sample size of 1 or 2. It happened to this kid, therefore it happens to all kids. This is what my daughter did in New York, therefore all of New York. Reading curriculum is bad. Read Jessica Winter's article. Uses anecdotal evidence and experiences to illustrate research versus using it as research. Considers journalists to be journalists. Considers journalists to be valid sources. Writes research, scholarly articles and books. Writes stories and columns. Writes for an audience with some knowledge and expertise. Writes for an audience with little knowledge or expertise. Strives for objectivity, reliability, and validity, reports limitations. Strives for accuracy, creates the illusion of objectivity, does not report limitations or conflicts. Considers themselves to be experts because they are. Considers themselves experts on a subject because they write about it. Understands the basics of science and research. Understands the basics of journalism. Who might be able to provide the best information about reading instruction? Expertise is important in conducting research and scholarly work in any field. You know what questions to ask. You understand the context. You know what data to collect. You understand how to collect the data. You understand how to make inferences based on the data. You understand the limitations of data. You understand the difference between data and research. Why is scholarship, knowledge, and expertise being shunned in favor of common sense, business sense, and political sense? I welcome journalists into our academic conversations, but you do not get a free pass on ignorance. You need some background knowledge to have the conversation. It's really hard, and I've tried to have conversations with journalists who have shallow and disjointed knowledge base, and I'm often having to correct the questions they ask. This has been the Reading Instruction Show. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Andy Johnson.